Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh man, I know.
How many folks are disappointed? You know, they're like, we had Paul Finebaum at the start of the week. They're getting their hopes up. Maybe Tim Tebow shows up. Nope, the doppelganger. We'll Big Shane in on Wednesday. You know.
I'm glad to be talking with you, Shane. I was joking, but it was sincere, man. I'd rather talk to you than anybody when it comes to this stuff. And Paul's just, he's number 2, but not by much. But you're still on that top of that list, man. You're the fan favorite, no doubt.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And big get for the pod. It's it is somebody that we always idolized growing up, especially in SEC football and talking SEC football. Who would have thought, man? Several years ago, I'm doing this out there under a gazebo, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, and now you got Paul freaking Finebaum sitting next to you. So I just thought that was awesome, and just I don't know, it's surreal. I told so many people today that he came on the show, and the number one answer I got was, well, how much did you have to pay him?
Well, I thought it'd be funny.
A cameo,
I thought it'd be funny, Shay, to start this show off, tell you the kind of little behind the scenes on how that all came together, because I've not spoken about it. I've not even told you about it, Shane. So we'll share it with the audience together. But yeah, I mean, that was a real treat for me. I was so nervous, and you know this because we were in communication all week. But man, the SEC basketball tournament. It's a weird deal because obviously if it was football, there are a lot more connections I would have had there. So I didn't quite know who was going to be at the tournament. A lot of it was watching Finebaum and saying, oh, that guy's there. Let me text him. This guy's there. Let me text him. I was going over social media trying to get see who was driving on their way to Nashville, see if I could get them in the studio. But we had people cancel on us, and I'm not going to name names because that's their prerogative. No hard feelings. Going back to what you were joking about, I'm not paying these people, so I can't expect them to show up if so much going on, and just very grateful for all the guests we did get. We've already put out 2, obviously Paul, Ty. We got 2 more coming, so very, very appreciative to those we got. But Shane, knowing that hey, I don't have a boss. This is my work, and if you had to guess, what time do you think I go to bed at night? What time do you think I get up? Just a ballpark.
I would say bed probably around 1 midnight, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You got to clean me up a lot, so you're probably up later than most. I'd say 1 o'clock. And then I'd say you roll out of bed probably about 10, 11. Am I right?
Well, you were dead on about going to bed. I mean, 12, 1, that's about when I go to bed, but I generally do wake up around 8:30 if I can. The night before Paul Finebaum, Shane, I went to bed at 9:30 at night because I wanted to ensure I got sleep, and I didn't oversleep a damn meeting, and I woke up at 5 a.m. and the interview was at 10, so I gave myself 5 full hours to drive the 30 minutes I needed, just in case anything happened. But man, he could not have been any nicer, Shane. He came into the back lot. He was, I wouldn't even say this if this was his car. I thought it was, but I thought it was the president showing up, Shane. It was a black SUV Escalade, blacked out windows. Yeah. And I was like, my God, Paul's rolling over here, but it was just an Uber. So that's the only reason I gave away the car info, but came in.
Yeah.
He's the only one, Shane, that I've done probably a dozen interviews there. He's the only one that really wanted a tour of not just where we were recording, but the entire building and everything. And, a guy like that stayed about 20, 25 minutes after just talking. So really, really great guy. And yeah, I was hoping to God no one could tell how nervous I was while I was sitting there asking him all those questions.
Well, I was trying to like not ask you questions leading up to this thing because I get that way too. I'll never forget first day of SEC media days. I didn't sleep at all, because I didn't know how the day would play out. I didn't know who we were going to talk to. In my mind, I had conversations with Nick Saban. In my mind, I had conversations with Paul Finebaum, and it's like, if this happens, I need to be prepared. And so my mind is just, it was exhausted. So I totally get it. And that's why I kind of dodged you that weekend. I just wanted to kind of give you less to think about because I know, hell, we're family. I'm sure we think the same, It's just the mind can't turn off. So I'm surprised you went to bed at 9:30 because my ass would have probably been – I probably wouldn't have slept. I probably would have stayed up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning just thinking about every rabbit hole Paul may take me on. Again – this is one of many conversations, Mike. We're growing, and this is awesome. And I don't want to shortchange Ty. If you haven't listened to Ty's conversation Tuesday, it was a hell of a podcast too. We've had so many great guests on there, and we're going to continue to have more guests. And it was just surreal though seeing. One of the bigs coming up there, So that's just that. You did great. You nailed it, Mike. I was nervous for you. I was listening to the pod. I could tell in your voice. I was like, shit, he's nervous as hell, Where's Shane now? He needs to come in there and say a joke so I can kind of redo my thoughts here.
Yeah, I could have used it. Maybe next time, brother. But, hey, we have actually got some football to discuss, Shane. So we got a fun topic here. We're going to be able to hit on all 14 SEC teams, which we love to do. We've got some coach comments. But before we get to that, just wanted to make note of this, Shane. They have, just the other day, I believe this was Monday, announced the complete spring game lineup for, how fans can watch it, every upcoming spring game. And I didn't realize this, Shane. Saturday, we got us a spring game. Can you believe that? So Missouri will be concluding spring here this Saturday at noon. The Missouri Black and Gold spring game, of course. And it's one of those digital, you got to be able to subscribe to ESPN, SEC Network, digital, what have you, or watch on your computer. So that's coming up. I didn't realize, we're already into the spring games here. Did you?
No, I didn't know the games, but I did see some of the schedule come out. Are you going to go over that? I think the only one that made prime time was, of course, G-Day down there in Georgia, right? I think they got on ESPN too. Everybody else is on that digital route.
Right. So, like I said, March 18th, that'll be Missouri. That'll be the first one. And then we've got Vanderbilt and Auburn kicking off April 8th. And again, same deal with those. You got to be, online viewing or, I think you can get it if you got one of those smart TVs like I've got. That's kind of how I view a lot of that. But so Auburn and Vanderbilt Saturday, April 8th. And then the next week, fully loaded here.
Okay, so this Saturday we've got Mizzou.
Yep.
Arkansas. Is that what you said?
Just
Auburn.
Just Mizzou this Saturday.
Oh, okay. This Saturday, and then April is the next one.
April 8th.
I wonder why's Mizzou so early? They got something going on.
Well,
want to get it over with or something?
Old Eli. He's got a philosophy that God forbid anybody gets hurt in the spring, but if that happens, just a lot more time for them to heal up and rehab for the fall season. So there is some strategy to it. But I heard the high is like 40 degrees on Saturday.
Yeah. Enjoy your spring break there, guys.
So that April 8th, again, Auburn and Vanderbilt. So that, several weeks from now.
Right.
Then we got a loaded weekend the following weekend, starting Thursday, April 13th. So a Thursday spring game, Florida. The orange and blue will be 7:30 Eastern time on a Thursday. And then that following Saturday, April 15th, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas A&M, and South Carolina at night. I hate how they load all these up, man. Give me 2 months of spring games. You know what?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we got one now, clearly we can push this stuff up. We should have a few next Saturday, a few Saturday after that, and just kind of break it up so we can all enjoy it. But The fact of the matter is there's a lot of football not being played after April, so I guess we can always go back and check these films out in May, June, and July.
Yeah. And then last but not least, Saturday, April 22nd, the final two, LSU and Alabama, both kicking off their spring games. It's pretty funny. The two preseason
did Alabama
favorites
get ESPN2 or anything?
No, just Georgia. So Georgia, as you highlighted, ESPN2. It's usually Alabama, Shane, but
yeah,
I'm surprised Nick Saban hadn't complained about that yet. You know what?
Well, don't be surprised if it doesn't flex at the last moment, Mike. We got plenty of time. But I am really surprised because that is a game typically you can follow on ESPN2 or even ESPN. I guess I'm sure they'll have a replay pretty soon after the game, but that is a surprise to me that Georgia's the only one.
Yeah. Well, and then looking ahead, Shane, this was also announced just on Tuesday here. Pretty exciting news because, hey, we love SEC football, but again, when you throw all these games on at the same time, it's hard to view them all. Florida, Shane, of course, they're opening the season at Utah. That game is officially going to kick off on Thursday. So Thursday night, week 1, we're going to have some SEC football to enjoy. Florida at Utah, big matchup here, primetime game, August 31st. The Florida Gators, Shane, have not played on a Thursday since 1992. So, hey, that's going to be a hell of a way to
game.
No, they lost it actually to Mississippi State.
Just kidding. I didn't know. I was like, it's 50-50. Who was it? I'm curious now. 1992. Who was the Thursday game?
Mississippi State.
Oh, Bulldogs. Look at them. Undefeated on Thursday. Well, no, they can't. Never mind. I've seen a few Egg Bowls, so I can't really say that. But, no, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool stat, Mike. I like that. And I think this is big. That's huge for Florida. A lot of people were talking about them after that Utah game last year.
Yeah.
And I think even more, if things go our way, and our way, I mean SEC way, I think they're going to put Gainesville back on the map, because everyone's going to be watching that game that Thursday night.
Right, and I think it sets up well for the Gators, Shane, because that exact reason, many people, Utah once again won the Pac-12. We had to hear about that all off season. They're going to whoop the hell out of Florida down there in the swamp. Well, didn't happen, did it? And we predicted Florida to win that game. They're going to be picked against in this game, no doubt, on the road. Obviously with all the losses they had, they got nothing. They're playing with house money. They got nothing to lose. You go on the road. You beat Utah, defending Pac-12 champs, just like you said, Shane. That's going to be the story of the day there. They're going to get an entire, Friday coverage of just hoopla saying, I can see it now, Shane. They doubted us. Well, by God, they better not doubt us anymore. So the storylines write themselves. You know what?
Well, and I'm just looking at their schedule. What's interesting with this is on the 9th, so you're talking 10, 11 days later, they got McNeese State, so that's going to be another tune-up game. Mm-hmm. One starters really shouldn't be involved in the entire match to prepare for Tennessee the following week. So you're 3 weeks into this thing. You guys should be pretty rested up too. So I think you're looking at that schedule. You got to be pretty excited. Charlotte following that Tennessee game. Florida has a real shot here, buddy. I'm telling you, to get some buzz at the start of the season.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of some buzz, Shane, this guy's he's playing with house money here. He can do no wrong. They're in Baton Rouge. Last time we discussed, Shane, Nick Saban, he's mad, he's angry. He don't want to play Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU. It's unfair. Well, Brian Kelly, he don't mind having to face Alabama every season. Let's kick it over to Brian Kelly's comments here. And like I said, he's just going to keep on winning fans with comments like this.
Coach, can you talk about your 3 defined future SEC opponents and going to a 9-game schedule? One of the other coaches in the SEC seems to have a problem. And your thoughts on the draw you received?
Yeah, I mean, we play all 3 of those teams. So for me, it just didn't seem to be any different. I expected that it was probably going to be Ole Miss and Alabama, and whether it was going to be A&M or Texas or somebody else, it's not something that I really thought much about because I wanted to play SEC teams. That's why I came here. So I just think I come from it from a different perspective in that I respect all the opponents we play, and I think it's important that we play certain teams. But if we could play all SEC schools, and that was the smart thing, I know it's not the smart thing to do, but I think 9 is great because it's going to prepare you and your football team, for what eventually will be in 2024, an expanded, playoff field, and I think that's a good thing.
All right, Shade, he's already 1-0 against Nick Saban as an SEC coach.
Yeah.
Hell, I consider him 2-0 after this comment. How about you?
I love it. I love it because this is following, of course, Nick Saban bitching about having to play so many powerhouses in the upcoming seasons, and Freeze just goes out there, and this is what you want, man. I think as an Auburn fan, you've had some good coaches come through there, but more like mouthpieces. It feels like, I like to have a ballsy coach that comes out here, wins on the mic as well, get your team, get your fan base fired up. And that's what you do. The easiest way to do it down there is take shots at the king, Nick Saban. So this is gonna be a hell of a game. But one thing I will say, Nick Saban, he won't come out and admit that he listens to anything media has to say, but he is taking notes. So you better put your money where your mouth is when it comes down to the Iron Bowl.
Yeah. And one other thing, just wanted to make note of this real quick, Shane, because I thought this was pretty cool. But obviously, Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame before this. One of his former offensive linemen, Mike McGlinchey, I hope I said that right, just signed a big deal with the Denver Broncos. And one of the Notre Dame beat writers down there said the 2015 Notre Dame offensive line has made $379 million in the NFL. I'm surprised if it hadn't happened already. LSU, make you a graphic of that you can put out there on the recruiting trail. By God, Brian Kelly's O-line, $400 million and counting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be pitching that one if, you know what?
Oh, they will, Mike. They absolutely will. That's one thing I love about LSU is their hype reels, man. That hot team, they can get it out there. They'll be fine. They don't need our help. Yeah.
And also, hey, speaking of the schedule, Shay, we had Hugh Freeze just the other day said, something similar. Didn't quite go as viral as old Brian Kelly, but same thing. How do you feel about having to play Alabama, Georgia, and what seems
shit.
like...
Did you say Brian? Did you open up with Brian Kelly, or did you? I'm just talking about Hugh Freeze coming out because I heard him. The clip you're about to play, right, is the one he was saying that he welcomes Nick Saban. That's the one I thought you were talking about. So we got Brian Kelly and Hugh Freeze both saying they want Bama, pretty much.
Exactly, Shane. Which don't make Nick Saban, the damn king of college football, look too good when all his competitors want some of Bama. Now that they see, I mean, they're still a juggernaut, Shane. Let's not kid ourselves. They're if they win 11 games, it's a disappointment down there in Tuscaloosa. But it's pretty wild to see all these coaches say, "Hey, bring it on, brother, because we're coming right for you." I don't know. I don't know if they sense blood in the water. I don't know. Maybe they'll all regret these comments when they lose by 60 points next year. But let's kick it over to Hugh Freeze. He's asked about the schedule, and don't forget, he's got to play Georgia every year too in this new format. Yeah. So Hugh Freeze, he ain't running.
Yeah, I don't. Have they decided the format yet? So. I've kind of the makeup until if I can't control it, it's probably not worth me worrying about. And I have zero control, and I trust John Cohen and Dr. Roberts, and they're sitting in those meetings, and they're going to do the best they can to do what's best for Auburn University, and whatever that ends up being, you know what? we all knew coming into this league when we took these jobs that you're going to have a hard schedule. Some of us have it harder than others and are used to that. And it is what it is, and me complaining about it or worrying about it certainly is not going to help us prepare for it. And so I just, it is what it is. And, if you ask me, after they've decided on the format, I probably could tell you who I'd like for our crossovers to be, but it's probably not going to be those. And so it's just really not worth me worrying about it.
Is it a policy saying you'd rather not share who you prefer for your crossovers?
Oh, I don't listen. Every year is probably quite different, but I would assume in whatever format they're going to give us that we're probably going to have a couple tough draws. And it is what it is, and that's exciting for our fans and exciting for our kids. And but really, me sitting around worrying about what will be decided on the format really probably doesn't help us one bit.
Absolutely. So I love it, man. Look at them. LSU, Auburn, they're all coming for you. They're all coming for you, Nick Saban. Come on now. This is going to be – I'll tell you what, this is one of the things. There's going to be a couple storylines coming into this college football season.
Yeah.
And it's for the longest time, there was a few coaches that sat on top of Mount Olympus, and it feels like – we're finding out that they're not gods. They're humans, and these coaches are coming after them. So this is what I love, man. I'm telling you, every year, especially when we expand this thing and we get into 9 SEC games, Mike, every year is going to be an absolute bloodbath. Just like Brian Kelly said earlier, it's going to galvanize them. It's going to callous them up. So when they do make it to a college football playoffs, man, they are going to be absolutely ready.
Right. Now, on the other side of things, Shane, certainly not calling out Nick Saban here. Eli Drinkwitz also had some interesting thoughts just the other day on the SEC schedule. I think he makes some good points. We gotta look at this thing from all sides of the table here. So let's kick it over to Eli, who, as he points out, man, I'm an SEC guy, grew up in the region. I love these SEC games. I just thought he made an interesting point here.
I thought we just had to talk to Ross Dellinger about this stuff. There's been conversations. I've not seen anything finalized. I've seen proposals that was brought to us in the last SEC spring meetings last summer. That was a proposal on both a 8-game schedule and a 9-game schedule, and what those would look like. Obviously, I think we're in a situation now with knowing that OU and Texas are coming in 24, that's going to have to be decided on in the next, 2 to 3 months. I'm call me whatever, old-fashioned or whatever. I believe that what makes the SEC great is its establishment, Southern traditions. It's the passion that our fans have for the game. It's the passion that our fans have for family and tradition and going out on Saturdays. And so I'm not as apt as some of the other ones in our league that think we have to go to every campus in the SEC, and that might sell more tickets. But I am for keeping regional rivalries. I am for keeping consistency of opponents. I think anytime that you have more sporadic opponents, it's tougher to gauge. You may have the best team you've ever had, but you're going against brand new opponents, and there's a lot more variables there. I think when you can consistently recruit against permanent opponents, you have a better chance to gauge how your program is growing and developing. And again, I don't speak for anybody else, but my personal view is I can't imagine some of these SEC schools not playing each other every year. As somebody who grew up in SEC country, it's hard for me to imagine that certain rivalries would not be played on a yearly basis. And they say, well, it's they would play every 2 years. I'd like to say, how does that work out for the Olympics? I don't think it's been a model that's proved to be perfect there. I think regional rivalries, yearly rivalries that stoke the fire of competition. And again, I think with the new wave of college athletics, we need fan engagement now more than ever to fund whether it's the NIL or ticket sales or whatever it's going to be in order for our game to be great. I think we gotta. I'm for permanent, whether that's 8 or 9. I'm for some sort of permanent opponents.
All right, Shane. So no surprise. I mean, he's not against 9-game, at least not publicly here, but he'd love 8-game SEC East schedule. You know what?
Yeah, he'd like to keep it the way it is if possible. There's a few coaches out there, Stoops. I'm talking to you. There's a few of them that I guarantee if you're in a back alley talking to them, saying, "Hey, now seriously, would you like to keep the schedule or would you like to change it?" They would absolutely love to keep it, but I think in the end it will be better for the fans. Maybe not the coaches. It's going to make it a little tougher on Eli. There's going to be a lot more pressure when you got 9 SEC games. So, but again, he'll rise to the challenge. He's a big boy.
Yeah. All right, Shane. So the main topic here, again, we're going to be able to hit on all 14 SEC teams. Wanted to just talk about the returning production, Shane, for every single SEC team. We've got total production returning. We've got offensive. We got defensive, where they rank in the SEC, as well as the returning starter numbers, courtesy of our good buddy Stephen Lassen, Athlon Sports. So these are the official numbers that are going to be in the upcoming Athlon Sports College Football Preview magazine. Does that all make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Shane,
Yeah.
Man, we're being optimistic, right? We are not burying A&M anymore. This is the season. If it don't happen this year, again, let's not even be negative. It's going to happen this year, Shane, and I'll tell you why. Because Texas A&M, I think we're going to be able to talk ourselves into a great rebound season, Shane. 80% of their total production from last year is returning. Number 1 in the SEC, number 7 in the entire country. A&M's returning a ton of production. 82% of the offense. That's the best in the SEC. Again, top 10 in the country. And 77% of the defense. When I throw those numbers at you, brother, how could you not like A&M to have a big bounce back season?
Crown them, baby. Crown them. I that's one of the things we talked about at the tail end of last season is it's just how young A&M was and that kind of showed in the locker room and off the field, some incidences that they had. But, this is a team, like you said, that is returning a ton of production. And I don't think it's bad production because there's that old saying, you could bring back the entire team, but if it's not good, it's still not going to be a good team. I don't think that's with A&M. They just needed some more weight on that offensive line. They needed some more snaps and play calling, and I think this is going to be a different A&M team to hit the field. Now, I am going to be we're trying to be optimistic here, Mike, but they really hurt me last season. They hurt me a lot, especially my wallet. So I may be a little bit hesitant, but I do like some of the moves that they made, and it's mainly with offensive coordinator. And, I still want to be a believer in Jimbo Fisher. It's a 6th season, and but 80% of your production coming back, I would think that there would be a massive, massive step forward for this program, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and 15 returning starters, also the most in the SEC. So that's why I say this got to be the year. And I'm not sitting here saying you got to win the national championship or anything like that, but we got so much talent. We got experience. We have got to take huge strides. Everything is in place for Texas A&M to have a big bounce back season. And boy, Shane, I am ready for the 12th man. I mean, they're just going to be tweeting and burying me after every big A&M win this year. You know what? And hey, I'll deserve it, but I hope for their sake they get that opportunity. You know what?
brother, they're going to be digging up every 2022 hot take that you had, so they are ready. They got them saved up, Mike. They know who you are. They ain't. Yeah. As soon as they unblock you, they're gonna start sending you some shit again. So, but I think they should. That fan base. I mean, you talk about a horrible year. That's a year they never want to talk about again. 5-7, that was absolutely miserable. But I think this is setting up to be kind of, I don't want to call it a Cinderella season, but definitely a comeback year, if you will.
Yeah. Now, how about this one, Shane? We love to hype up the Missouri Tigers. Number 2 in the SEC, number 9 in the entire country, returning production for Eli Drinkwitz program here. 78% total production returning, 77% on offense, and 80% on defense, which is top 10 in the country with 14 starters returning, 6 on offense, 8 on defense. Again, there's optimism with Missouri. We got to get this quarterback settled. We got to get the right guy. We got a new offensive coordinator. The pieces are in place for Missouri to take a big jump. We got to have, I believe, old Eli. We love him to death, but he's not had a winning season. It's almost like he's got to have it with all these things coming together, don't you think?
Well, we talked about the schedule earlier in the show. I think the schedule lines up perfect for him as well, and this has got to be their year. And the problem with a lot of returning is everybody wants to talk about the quarterback. So Brady Cook's going to be a hot topic, but when I think of Mizzou, the first thing I think about is defense. And not only were they really good at times and sometimes great at times last year, but they're bringing back 80% of their production, Mike. There's 8 starters that are on defense that will be suiting up again for the Mizzou Tigers. So I think that is the key. That defense should be able to keep these guys in just about every football game. We just need the one starter, Brady Cook, to take that big step forward, that huge sophomore season. If he could come out here and totally rock our world, then they've got the production around him, but he's got to have there's got to be some improvement, Mike.
Yeah, and also, Shane, this will be the first time that Eli has had the same defensive coordinator for back-to-back seasons. I mean, every year it's been a revolving door. So you would think that strong defense, the continuity, is only going to help it.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, next on the list, Shane, a little bit of a drop-off, but number 3 in the SEC, that's pretty good. The Auburn Tigers, 28th overall in the country. They returned 71% of their total production, 72% on offense, 71% on defense. And them Auburn Tigers, Shane, returned 11 starters, only 3 on offense, 8 on defense. But, you would assume with a Hugh Freeze offense coming in there, returning starters on offense wouldn't be critical anyway, because it's going to be a drastically different system. But that's another reason for Auburn fans to be optimistic that it's not going to be a total rebuild or turnaround, because the expectations at Auburn is to compete for SEC and national title. They're not quite there yet, but they've attacked the portal. Tons of new players coming in there. Reason for optimism for Auburn, don't you think?
Yeah, and just real quick, I want to touch on, I mentioned Cook as sophomore. I meant his second year, not his sophomore season. So you could go ahead and delete that tweet. I didn't mean it that way. But back to Auburn, brother, I think this is kind of a unique situation, because when you do have a coach change like we did, typically we lose a lot more. They're going to be at the bottom of this list. So this is kind of unusual, and I think that's awesome. You look at what Kelly did there in LSU. He wasn't able to retain as much talent, and I know Auburn's got some building to do, but I think it's the fact they got the defense set, man. If they can get, like I said, like Mizzou earlier, if they can just keep them in some ball games, I think Hugh Freeze has got enough creativity on that side of the ball to make any game exciting. So, no, this is kind of impressive. I did not realize they had that much production coming back.
Right. Now, next on the list, Shane, Ole Miss, 4th in the SEC, 30th in the country with 71% total production returning, 80% on offense, 62% on defense, and they've got 13 starters returning. Now, the wild card, if you want to call it that, with a Lane Kiffin program, of course, the transfer portal. So
yeah,
you maybe have a returning starter here. You may have returning production here, but he's trying to upgrade. Whether you get better, like your Jackson Dart, we hope you make the strides. But if not, yeah, we brought in 2 quarterbacks that can beat you out if you do not take your game to that next level. So it's good to be in the top 4 in the SEC in returning production, but it's almost hard to gauge that for Ole Miss because we don't know who's going to be in there. But if nothing else, they're going to have some experienced backups.
Well, and I feel like they're going to play more seasoned as well. You know, you talk about Jackson Dart, a lot of quarterback controversy coming into the season last year. You know, doesn't necessarily have the starting. I don't know if he'll finish the season as a starting quarterback there in Ole Miss, but I think coming out of the gate with that much production behind you, I think Ole Miss is going to be dialed in a lot quicker than they were last season. And that's one problem you have when you have these transfers coming in, which Ole Miss will continue to do. It's just how quick can they get acclimated into that system. So, yes, even though we've got all this production returning, don't be surprised if some of those guys that Kiffin brought in doesn't surpass some of the ones that were listed as starters last season.
Yep. Now, LSU, Shane, number 5 on this list, 71% returning production overall, 81% on offense, second most in the SEC right there, 60% on defense they have 13 returning starters there in Baton Rouge. And I think this is a good reason why so many people are high on LSU. Top 5 returning production in the SEC, just won the West. You know, there'll be questions to be answered particularly on defense, but this offense, Shane, you got to think, you know, could be one of the strongest in the SEC, and it's pretty rare to have a division champion here in the top 5, particularly at a school like LSU, because, you know, Alabama, Georgia, so many guys go to the NFL, but LSU's got a ton of returning talent.
Oh yeah, and dude, they've got some damn Sunday night players too here. Yeah, Jaden Daniels and Perkins being just a few of them. That's what I like about LSU is they've got some big hitters and some key. You look on your graphic here. If you guys aren't, I know a lot of you are listening on your way to work or you're driving down the road. But if you get a chance, jump on the YouTube channel. Mike has got these damn graphics he sent over that are just awesome. Looking at it here, and we've got key returners. It shows the production, the transfer class, signing class, all that stuff. So be sure to check it out on our YouTube channel, that SEC podcast. But yeah, Mike, this is a team that, won the West last year, and you're bringing a lot of talent back. So there should be reason for optimism down there in Baton Rouge. And I think the key, everybody's going to be talking about it, the Heisman hype has already started, but Jaden Daniels leading the pack there.
Yeah. Now, Vanderbilt next on the list, Shane, number 6 in the SEC. Already heard Clark Lee say the joke, Shane, he's growing his hair back out because, hey, he's not dealing with all these young kids anymore. He's finally got some experience to work with there on the West End. 65% of the total production returning for Vanderbilt, 73% on offense, which was the stronger side of the ball for the Commodores next season, but only 56% on defense. It's one of the lowest in the SEC. 13 total starters back for the Commodores. Every year under Clark Lee, Shane, they've played better football by the end of the season, obviously capping that off last year by winning over Kentucky and Florida. If they can keep that momentum going, there's reason to believe that Vanderbilt is only going to get better.
Absolutely, and I think a healthy A.J. Swan coming in, that's going to be a key as well. A lot of people aren't talking about Vanderbilt, Coach Lee, you lead in with a stat with a hairline, it's like, well, which is kind of weird to me, Mike. Why would you even shave? I get it. I get it. But like if you're thin, that's kind of why I did it. I was thin and up top, all these women in my life. Eventually it was going to get me. It runs in our family. But, I would love to grow my hair out. And I was upset. I was talking to somebody the other day. When I was growing up, there was a lot of times that I kept my hair real short, like flat top. That's what my grandfather wanted, our other grandfather. and that's what I'm like, man, I had the ability to grow hair back then. I saw Paul Finebaum's young picture, I seen Ty on there the other day, with that big golden locks, and here's Coach Lee. He had the ability to grow his hair out, but he chose to go bald. It's not often you see somebody go from bald to hair again. So I'm kind of curious what this is going to look like. I don't think it's going to help their season at all. What's going to help their season is some of that key returning. So kind of to segue back to what we're actually talking about, Mike, I'd love what the pieces that they are bringing back, but there was some significant players to move on, and I'm wondering how that affects Clark Lee's third season here.
Yeah. Well, next on the list for you, buddy, number 7 in the SEC, Tennessee, 63% of the total production returning for the Vols, 57% on offense, 69% nice on defense, and 13 returning starters, 7 on offense, 6 on defense. But even with only 57% returning on offense, which is not great, it's 96th in the entire country. But with Josh Heupel in his offensive system, you got to have confidence that side of the ball will figure itself out pretty quick. But this is why I continue to suspect that the defense is just going to keep getting better, because we're getting deeper and deeper, more experience, more talent. I think Tennessee, this is going to be the best defense yet under Josh Heupel.
Which, who's talking about defense? When you mention Tennessee, after you have a 30-minute conversation, they start mentioning how much production's coming back on that side of the ball. So it's all about the offense there in Knoxville, but, it's the defense that really kind of, got us a few times last year. I'm thinking Columbia in particular. That was an absolute nightmare. So production is important, but that depth is more important, in my opinion, with how quick Heupel and offense is running. So yes, a lot of production coming back. We are going to miss a few guys, in particular Hooker. We love the story of Milton. It's been fun. We're going to see all kinds of cool highlight reels and oranges being thrown against the wall, but we're going to have some production on that side of the ball if we're going to continue to grow the way Heupel wants to. So I'm excited, brother, because when the offense is running, especially in Tennessee, there was a lot of young players coming in, stepping. I look at Squirrel White. I look at guys like that just came in a little later in the season, were huge factors in that offense. So it's their time to shine, man.
Yeah. Number 8 on this list, Shane, Kentucky. Now, I should mention, though, this does not count transfers. And they added arguably the best quarterback out of the portal, Devin Leary, who also a guy that we probably consider the best running back out of the portal, Ray Davis from Vanderbilt. But not including them, again, 63% of their total production returning, 71% on offense, 55% on defense, and they've also got 14 returning starters. So Kentucky is a little bit further down. They're in the back half, number 8 in the list. But again, 2 of your most critical offseason additions may offset that. I love the fact that Kentucky, surrounding those transfers, is very experienced and again, set up potentially for a really nice bounce-back season.
Yeah, and you may want to close your ears, Kentucky fans, but there's some of those starters that aren't coming back that you're kind of happy for. You know what I'm saying? I sometimes that back to that production thing. It's who you're bringing back. They've got some good players, especially. I'm looking at the defense. You got 6 guys coming back, and speaking of 6, J.J. Weaver leading that crew. I think that's huge for Kentucky. And then what you got on offense is that transfer class, man. You kind of hit on it. If you got bad production, Mike, you don't want it back. I think what they did is they went out there, they went shopping, and they found a few pieces to make Kentucky relevant again. And they are definitely going to make some noise in the East this year, Mike. I'm telling you, the hype train will be pumping by the time we have kickoff in late August.
Yep, no doubt. Now, number 9 in the SEC, Georgia, which... hey, it's all right. I mean, back-to-back national champions, send them all to the NFL. They did it 2 years, a year ago, and no drop-off. So I ain't feeling too bad. So much elite talent because I got so much elite talent backing those guys up, ready to play. But Georgia, 61%, their total production returning, 52% on offense, which is 109 in the country. So we got some making up to do on the offensive side of the ball. But how about this, Shane? 70% of the defense, they were already elite. That ranks number 4 in the SEC returning. So they'll probably not give up a damn touchdown all season. 13 returning starters back for the defending national champions. So again, number 9 in the SEC. But teams like Georgia, and we'll get to one more here in a minute, these returning production is not really indicative of what the team is just because they're so absolutely loaded. You know what?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Mike. Georgia Bulldogs, they're a machine right now. When you're pumping out number 1, number 2 recruiting classes every single year, you could look at a stat like this and say, hey, well, we're only bringing back 61% of returning production. Well, a lot of those guys that are going to be starters now played last year. They maybe didn't play the entire game. Maybe they played just a quarter, but they were that depth, that competitive depth that Georgia has and flexes on everybody. There's no drop off in Athens, and we're not going to see it this year. This is probably the most, when you're looking at a preview for the Georgia Bulldogs, you could probably throw returning production right out, returning starters outside. You could throw some of that out. They're bringing some key players, Brock Bowers, Starks, Bullard. There's a ton of talent that's coming back. But there's a lot of guys that have been waiting in the corner, and they're ready to get their shot down there, and that's what Kirby and company will do. So, it's going to be another electric year for the Georgia Bulldogs for sure.
And to go back to your point, Shane, I mean, it seems like just because whether you're designated a starter or not, who really cares? But it's clear Georgia under Kirby Smart plays better at the tail end of the season than they do at the beginning. Remember the first year they won the title? Yep. I mean, that was an ugly-ass game against Clemson. Could have went either way. And then by the end of it, they're stomping Alabama to win a national championship. Last year, fairly early, Missouri could have beat them. And then they just dog-whipped Tennessee. The SEC championship was one of the worst games I've ever seen, and not because it was two bad teams. It was because it was one of the best teams of all time versus a decent team. And then, of course, the national championship, anybody that watched that into the third quarter that wasn't a Georgia fan, I guess their TV was broken because, they could have won that game by 80 points. You know what?
I know. I was talking to somebody the other day. It was a TCU alum, and they went to that national championship, and I said, I'm sorry about that. You'd think you'd say, well, congratulations on making it to a national championship, but then you just kind of want to say, man, I hate that you wasted all that money. You could have left. You could have watched that at the bar, man. So, but anyway, Georgia, they'll be geared up and ready to go. I'm interested. Since it's going to be on ESPN, I might as well flip over and check out this G-Day. I'm kind of curious about some of these names that we've not really heard of and see who's the next great Bulldog to step up.
Yeah, and of course, they hit the transfer portal pretty hard, too, for a couple key pieces. Yeah. So, I'm not shedding any tears over their roster. Number 10 in the SEC, Shane, Mississippi State. It surprised me that they were this low. I thought they were bringing back a little bit more production than this. 57% of their total production, 71% on offense, 43% on defense, and they return 11 starters total, 7 on offense, 4 on defense. But again, you got the quarterback back, you got some key pieces on defense, some of the best linebackers in the entire SEC. So it's not doom and gloom over here.
Right.
I really like the additions they made on their coaching staff. Zach Arnett, of course, we know what a great defensive coordinator he is. Mm-hmm. We're going to find out this year how good of a head coach he is. But little surprising to see Mississippi State this far down the list. I think they were number 1 last year, so it's only logical that they took a step back in returning production.
Do you think, does that worry you at all? I mean, first year, Zach Arnett. Yeah. Obviously, the lack of defense coming back is a little alarming, but the fact you got Zach there, you think that there shouldn't be much drop-off on that side of the ball. Will Rogers leading the helm again. Are you worried that there's not more production coming back with Mississippi State?
I mean, a little bit, to be honest with you, Shane. But if you look up the schedule, I mean, they've got a number of home games right out the gate, and some. I think they open against Southeast Louisiana, and I think Akron is in there. So it's like they're gonna get up to speed. I would think relatively quickly. But I wonder. Whenever you have a coaching change like this, I know it's not a complete coaching change because Zach Arnett was already there. He kind of can see, the flaws in the roster and the program and shore them up. So maybe it's not fair to say this, but sometimes when you have a new team, maybe you don't want a lot of those guys back. But again,
right,
Mississippi State finished pretty damn strong last year. So yeah,
it wasn't like it wasn't. I mean, Mike Leach didn't get fired. It wasn't. This is an unusual situation. Obviously we did lose some players during that transition, but it wasn't like the locker room was divided coming in. So yeah, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm just kind of interested to see how that plays out, and I'm wondering if the lack of experience coming back is going to be a bad thing for them, or do they need a clean break? Do they need a reset because they're going to change the complete style moving forward?
Where it would really concern me, Shane, is if they didn't have Will Rogers, who he's been so experienced, so productive, such a good player. If you were having to insert a new quarterback, I would really be concerned. But having him back, it kind of negates some of that concern for me.
That's a good point.
All right, number 11. This also surprised me. I thought they were a little bit more experienced than this. South Carolina, 11th overall in the SEC, 55% total production, 63% total offensive production, and 48% of their total defensive production. And South Carolina has 10 starters back. But, of course, Spencer Rattler's back. Again, that's huge.
Right.
Juice Wells, arguably the best receiver returning in the SEC. They've got some really nice pieces. They also added a lot via the transfer portal. Just signed a 5-star tight end who's 6'9" and runs like a 10-400. So, I mean, they've got some nice pieces. New offensive coordinator, obviously. But, again, a little surprised that they were this far down the list. And that's got me pumping the brakes just a little bit. Not a lot. I don't want to lose all our Gamecock fans here, but just pumping the brakes a little bit.
We ain't gonna pander either, I'm with you, Mike. The way they closed out the season last year, I was buying all the stock in South Carolina, and the fact that they don't have as much talent returning, but what they do have is one of the best quarterbacks. I say what you want. I know there's a lot of people that are hit or miss when you mention Spencer Rattler, but South Carolina fans love him for a reason because he was able to win those 2 games. Say what you want, Mike. Two impressive wins there at the tail end of the season. Can he return that with Juice Wells and company? Yeah, I think the opportunity is there. You know, I hate that he's lost a few pieces around him, but I think I'm not maybe not pumping the brakes like you, but I am a little bit more leery, you know, coming into the season that I'm just going to say, hey, South Carolina's going to run the board here and be maybe the second best team in the East. I'm not willing to say that right now, and a lot of that has to do with some of the production not returning.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that same thing can be said about next on the list, Shane, number 12 in the SEC, Arkansas. 54% of their total production is back, 58% of the offensive production, and just 51% of the defensive production with 8 starters back. But again, KJ, I think he's the best quarterback in the SEC. Rocket Sanders, at worst, number 2 running back in the SEC, if not number 1. So there's a lot of pieces to like, but both offensive and defensive coordinators are new this year. So how's that going to shake out? But this has got me mildly concerned. But again, the defense was at times brutal. So losing to some of those guys may not hurt you. And they had a ton of guys exit via the transfer portal. I think that's why this number is so low. And a lot of those guys, Shane, I think they were kind of hurting the program being in there. So maybe you lose some of those guys, you get more people on the same page. It's going to be good for your football program. But I can't sit here and say you got the 12th most returning production, and I'm excited about it if I'm Arkansas.
Yeah, because it wasn't like we were singing their praises last year and the depth that they had up there in Arkansas. So
right.
I think that's part of the reason that I'm a little bit more worried than most on this. Obviously, KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, those guys would be starters on just about any team in the country. So obviously that is something to celebrate and be excited about. But around you, what does it look like? We're 4th season in here with Sam Pittman, and I'm not convinced that the production that is coming back, or I guess the new starters there in Arkansas, that they're going to make monumental steps forward. It kind of surprises me that we don't have more depth, but you know, it's early, and like you said, they got rid of a few bad apples down there. I like a few of the transfers that they had come in, so maybe we see a different Razorback this season. But I'm a little hesitant. I'm trying to be optimistic, Mike, but this one worries me probably more than most.
Right, and it worries me too, Shane. Number 13, Florida, 54% total production, 55% on offense, 53% on defense. Florida's got 10 starters returning. And again, they sent 9 players to the NFL Combine. They may have 3 first-round picks. New defensive coordinator who's not even 30 years old yet. And there's just a lot of questions. And hell, we just opened the show with it. They're open at Utah, which I think has won 2 or 3 Pac-12 titles in a row. Didn't help their ass last year, though, so we've got to remember that. But there's some concern. But again, a lot of the same issues I said with Arkansas. A ton of guys hit the portal. I think a lot of those guys were asked to leave, so I'm not hitting the panic button there. But, Anthony Richardson, say what you want about him. I mean, he wasn't perfect last year, but he really put the team on his back, and he's gone. He may be, I think he will be a top 10 pick. I don't know where he'll go in that, but it's very difficult to see them, just being juggernauts right out the gate. And the standard is very, very, very high in Gainesville.
It is, Mike. And I will tell you, brother, I didn't feel like that Billy had a full reset last year. I think he has it this season. I think this is his program. I think this is what it's going to look like while he's down there. It's going to be very run heavy with Johnson and Etienne, 2 of the best running backs in the game. So I do love the fact that those guys came back. We can build around that, but the production, that's going to be that asterisk beside this class. There's going to be people that follow these guys that go to the NFL and say, I cannot believe they were down in Gainesville. Well, it doesn't matter if you're not playing great as a team. There's a whole bunch. It felt like there was a lot of individuals on that program last year, and I think we're going to get a little bit more of a team effort moving forward with the Florida Gators. So maybe a hard reset's not a bad idea. So I'm not as worried because what you had going, like you said, pushed in the portal. Some of these guys, I think that's what they needed. So yeah, I'm good with this.
So the only team we haven't mentioned, Shane, and it seems like they're annually dead last on this list because they're sending so many guys to the NFL, and that's, of course, Alabama. Only 40% total production. That's 125th in the country. 43% of their offense, 38% of their defense, 9 total starters back for the Crimson Tide. They also have 2 new coordinators. It was obviously a big storyline all off season, but again, similar to Georgia, I mean, I'm not too concerned about Alabama because they're so loaded, and it seems like they're here every year at the bottom of this list. It is slightly concerning that next, Florida's at 54%. Alabama's all the way down here at 40%.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not too concerned. I don't think we should read too much into this for Alabama. What's your thoughts?
Not too concerned, but a little concerned, if you will, because mainly this is the first time in a long time we don't have the quarterback situation kind of ironed out.
You're not superstitious, but you're a little stitious.
Little stitious on this one, Mike. And I don't know. It felt like Alabama is one bad recruiting class away from really losing the reins a little bit, and I know they just had the number 1 class, but sometimes that doesn't matter, Mike. If it doesn't pan out, let me look at Texas A&M. How many of those guys hit the portal? So, I think Alabama is going to rely on a lot of youth down there, and I have full respect for Nick Saban and his staff and everybody he brings in there. So I guarantee he's going to get the most out of these guys, but they're going to have to. They're going to have to pick it up quick, you know what I'm saying? Because you drop a loss early in this season, I'm not saying there's a hot seat down there, but there's going to be a lot of leery fans looking around saying, well, what does the future for Alabama look like,
Yeah. Well, I just thought this would be a nice little off-season topic, something for everybody to think about here as we, we're in spring football, need some content during the off-season, but this is not the complete picture, but it is a piece of the puzzle. If you're at the top of this list, I'd be pretty happy. If I'm at the bottom, I don't know if scared's the right word, but I'd just be hesitant. So, but hell, you'll probably have a ton of transfers and freshmen ready to dominate, set up to be the next guys we're talking about on this show. But, hey, brother, you got anything else before we hop off the line?
Well, one thing I would be concerned, or not concerned, just curious about, maybe on our next show, you can bring up the year prior, like coming into 22. What did it look like that way? And not that saying that there's some mathematical formula to figure out if your team's going to be good or not, but I'm just wondering how skewed it would be. So, you look at Alabama at the very bottom of the SEC. I wonder if they were there last year. I wonder if Georgia was there last year, because they lost a lot to the NFL.
Right.
And then they bounced back and become national champs again. So, that's the only thing I've got, man.
Well, I appreciate
little more work for you,
Exactly.
As I sit here and I drink my cold beer. Looks like you're going to bed at 2:00 tonight, Mike.
I always appreciate the extra homework assignment from Cousin Shay, but
yes.
Hey, that's all I got on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. I appreciate you, Shane, for showing up. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols. Yeah, I usually go to bed at 10 and I'm up at 6. That's my schedule. Now, sometimes I'll stay up a little later than I should, but I'm always up at 6 because I'm an old man now.